It's hard to imagine Naughty Dog making a more hopeful Last of Us Part 3 after the ending of Part 2. But I really feel like Naughty Dog has an amazing opportunity here to show Ellie healing from her trauma should they decide to make Part 3. Show Ellie show her
finding something to fight for.
The challenge here is that the Tilu series is very action-heavy, and at first glance, a game showing the aftermath of Ellie's decision to spare Abby doesn't exactly gel with a third-person shooter. However, I think it's very telling that many people will say their favorite part of Tilu 2 is the museum sequence with Joel and Ellie. A sequence with no real combat, just a brief fake-out combat segment when you collect ammunition and think you're going to battle enemies, only to have a wild boar charge you instead. In addition, Left Behind, the DLC for the first game, is often compared to indie titles that focus more on character and storytelling than action. While I still feel Left Behind has plenty of satisfying combat sequences, I think some of the non-combat sequences, like the arcade and photo booth, were a welcome addition that complemented the rest of the game nicely. Personally, I would love to see more of these non-combat heavy moments in Part 3. I do want to emphasize, though, that a Part 3 that focuses on Ellie in some capacity could still be an action-heavy game. Although they weren't as much of a focus in Part 2, it's safe to say the infected aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Additionally, if the Rattlers are anything to go by, it's clear the apocalypse has brought about the worst in humanity, so I'm confident Naughty Dog could give us plenty more human opponents for Ellie to face as well. Admittedly, it might be difficult to construct a narrative that balances compassion and forgiveness with action-heavy combat sequences without some element of ludonarrative dissonance, but I still think it could be done. In Part 1, the combat felt necessary for survival, whereas the combat in Part 2 was meant to feel unnecessary in a manner meant to emphasize the hollow nature of revenge. I think that if we return to combat as a means for survival in Part 3, a narrative focusing on the aftermath of Ellie's decision to forgive Joel and spare Abby would feel less jarring. For example, some of the combat sequences could task Ellie with protecting JJ in a manner reminiscent of how Joel protected Ellie in Part 1. Regardless of whether Part 3 actually comes to fruition, I definitely think the upcoming HBO show will provide ample opportunities for expanding on the characters we know and love. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'd love to hear any ideas you have for continuing this series. Until next time, ciao for now.